Hello and welcome to the November 2018 edition of the Plympton Podcast. I'm Andrew Hill. Coming up this month, we hear about some new jobs at Turnchapel Wharf, the appointment of 3 new aldermen in the city, issues related to safety on the A38, what needs to be done to arrest the decline of shopping in the city centre, what the future might hold for Hemerdon Mine, where we are at with plans to improve our rail infrastructure, and we also chat with some of those involved in this year's pantomime at the Theatre Royal. Tallers is a new maritime project which has come to Turnchapel Wharf. Local MP Gary Streeter explained more about it when he appeared on Charlotte Willis's radio programme Tea Time Treats at the end of October.
It's a French company, but it's partly British as well. Thales, they were starting their new business in Plymouth, choosing Plymouth because of our deep water and shallow water accessibility, our maritime experience, the number of very high-tech small and medium-sized enterprises which had sort of expertise relevant to what they wanted to do, and also the Plymouth University. So it's bringing together all of these things that some of us have been talking about for quite some time now, and investing in new business. It's only 20 jobs to start with, but they're well-paid jobs, and they hope to really see this business grow rapidly. And it's to create a whole new generation of boats which drive themselves. So they're not remote controlled from the shore, but you program them in advance and they go to where they're supposed to go. And the relevance of this, for example, underwater, there's an awful lot of relevance, but also for mine clearing. Currently we have a mine hunter with 30 people on it in harm's way. Well, if you can do that with a boat with got no human beings on it, so much the better. So it's exciting technology. Royal Navy very interested, and it's great to have that investment in Plymouth.
What do you think of the new Type 26 frigates that were going to be based at Devonport? What's your views on that?
Well, we've worked very hard to make sure that they will be based at Devonport, and that announcement has now been made. Of course, the boats have not yet been built. They're in the design stage, but apparently it's all very high-tech and very wonderful. And in fact, we've already sold some to Australia, I think in Canada, and 1 or 2 other countries around the world. So it looks like it's going to be a cracking vessel. And of course, its primary purpose will be to defend our 2 massive aircraft carriers, the new generation of aircraft carriers we're bringing on board. And I think we are now investing once again in our Royal Navy after decades of decline. So that's very good news.
This year's pantomime at the Theatre Royal is Dick Whittington. Jonathan Kiley is its executive producer, and Keith Jolly has been talking to him.
Well, it's always a pleasure when the pantomime season comes around to talk to Jonathan Kiley. And Jonathan, I know that you're spending a lot of time over the past 12 months trying to get this all together.
We are. 35 shows. We have to do it 35 times to organise casts, creatives, sets, costumes. It's a huge operation. But we love it. It's what we do.
Now, is Plymouth a bit difficult because Plymouth has a long season, so are you limited to who you can actually bring down here?
No. I mean, most of the artists, this year are out of contract with EastEnders. Both John and Sam Womack, of course, have been starring in EastEnders, but they're not anymore, so they're both doing other things, and so they're relatively free date-wise, which is good. And but it is a problem with some artists. Certainly, some artists are. EastEnders are very funny about releasing artists and don't like to. Occasionally they do, and Coronation Street don't release artists at all. So that's a problem for us. It's a shame. But so you have to wait till they come out of contract, and hopefully that's about September, so their storyline carries on into Christmas, and then we get lucky, which is great. So it's tough. Casting 35 shows is a big operation, and it takes a long time. Well, the whole thing takes all year to prepare, and as soon as the shows are up and running, we start on the following year.
So when I talked to you last year, you were already thinking about this pantomime.
Yeah, we're already planning next year's pantomimes, which is extraordinary.
And I mean, have you already got ideas of who you want to bring down?
Oh, yes, absolutely, yes. And who we place. And we move artists around. We've got a lot of very loyal artists who work for us every year, and we move them around the country. And sometimes the show moves, sometimes just the artist moves. It depends.
How many people have you actually got you can call upon?
Hundreds. The contract list is ridiculous, and when you look back at the end of the year and go, have we really done that? It's extraordinary, contracting and organising hotels and accommodation and transport for all these people, and flights up to Edinburgh and Aberdeen and Belfast. But it's great. But it's a well-oiled machine, and everyone loves. It's a small team, but we adore what we do.
I mean, you had Paul Zerdin a couple of years ago.
Yes,
He was in America's Got Talent.
Yes.
I mean, were you aware that was going to happen when you actually...
Yes, yeah. And Paul is just... But Paul's worked for us for many, many years, of course, and still is, and has done the Palladium. This is his third year at the Palladium this year. So, but he's a brilliant act, lovely guy. And it is part of the Kunos family, and it really is a family. And we're very loyal to people, and if they're loyal to us, we're loyal to them, and take care of them. And they're artists who work for us for 45 years, and we love that. And it is a family, and everyone gets, like this morning here in Plymouth, everyone's getting on so well. We're having a laugh. We've got some great photographs here in this beautiful location, the tea rooms and things. It's just stunning. I've never been to this part of Plymouth before, and it's beautiful. So everyone's already bonding, and Andy Ford, who's playing Idle Jack this year in Dick Whittington, he's just such a funny man. He's even funny just when we're here doing a photo shoot and things. But and you can already feel them gelling and can't wait to get together and rehearse and have a great time. And pantomime, when the artists have a great time, the audience have a great time.
So you've got people here today. Is this the first time that they've met? I mean,
yes, it is the first time that Andy Ford's met John Partridge, but they're already bonding and getting on, and Nigel as well, and Nigel Ellicott, the dame, very famous pantomime dame, with us this year, and he's thrilled because he's actually never done Felicity Fitzwarren in Dick Whittington before, so it's a first for him because he was a very famous ugly sister, and now he's a dame in his own right, but he's never played Dick Whittington before, and he loves Plymouth, as every actor does, because the theatre here is so well equipped, and it is the National Theatre of Devon, and it's beautiful, and everyone loves coming here. It's just a great thing. And the great thing about Plymouth is you can't really go home. It's such a long way to go home, so everyone stays, and you get that great camaraderie, and everyone is a family living together, and they do bond and have a great time. And at Christmas, someone has a Christmas dinner in their apartment or whatever, and it's a great family feel. It's lovely, and everyone says, "Please, can I go back to Plymouth?" which is fantastic.
I mean, that's an interesting question, because do you actually get people, saying that you offer them Plymouth and they don't want to do it because it's too far away?
No, I mean, yes, with all the venues,
obviously people have got families.
People have got families in London, and if they've been on tour all year, then they want to spend a bit of time with their family at Christmas. So we do get that. That is a problem for some artists, and which is a shame. And I try and talk them into it, and extol the virtues of beautiful Plymouth and how you can have. I mean, Steve McFadden had a brilliant time here last year, and he loves the water, and he's a fisherman and everything. So I was talking to him in the dressing room. He said, "Jonathan, I had the best time ever. I don't have to learn a script every day. I can come in, enjoy myself, and I'm in the most beautiful place." And it is. The Hoe is so beautiful, and he had an apartment overlooking the Hoe, and he was in heaven, and he had the best time ever. So people, when they come here, they do have a brilliant time. But yeah, it is a problem sometimes getting people to go away at Christmas.
While appearing on the radio last month, Gary Streeter provided an update on what's happening to improve our local rail infrastructure.
Yes, I mean, it was February 2014, I'll never forget it, when our railway line was waving at us, over the sea. And, of course, it was quickly repaired, but basically it brought to a head the realisation that we have been shortchanged for decades here in the West Country, that we have got basically an old-fashioned railway line. And I took a group of business people and local authority leaders to see David Cameron in November 2014, and he said, "Come up with a 20-year plan, and we'll do our best to fund it." So that's what happened. It took a little bit longer for us to come up with that plan than we had wanted to. It was presented to the government, I think, in 2016. It's taken an awful long time to get to where we are today, which is hopefully on Monday in the budget, the Dawlish money will be confirmed. But we're waiting for Network Rail to bring forward a detailed engineering proposal of how they're going to solve the resilience problem. Going inland from Newton Abbot to Exeter would cost billions and take a very long time indeed to do, because it's you've got to now get planning permission, straight line through houses, it would be a nightmare. But so I think making the line from Dawlish to Exeter resilient is the right answer, and hopefully we will do that over the next couple of years.
Plymouth now has 3 new aldermen, former Lord Mayor and ex-Plymstock councillor Wendy Foster and her erstwhile political colleagues Ted Fry and Martin Leaves. Councillor Ian Bowyer proposed their nomination at an extraordinary meeting of Plymouth City Council.
Councillor Ian Bowyer, I understand you are introducing the motion.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. At intervals, it's one of our more pleasant duties to be able to recognise the achievements of former members, and I'm sure all members here this afternoon will agree with me that it's only right that we should do so. We have three names before us today: Wendy Foster, Ted Fry and Martin Leaves. Now, to serve as an elected member for any period of time is both an honour and a privilege, and it also requires commitment and a lot of hard work. But to meet our agreed criteria for selection as alderman is going much further, and it is right that we recognise those who serve for a minimum of at least 15 years. We all know how hard it is to persuade the electorate to support us on such a consistent basis, given the vagaries of political life. And I'm sure there are many amongst us who recognise that it's hard to get the electorates to support us on any occasion on some issues. That's just the nature of political life. And so we have before us three names today who collectively have served this city and this council for a total of 62 years. That's a significant amount of time, I would suggest, Lord Mayor. And that's the contribution to this council and to the city of Wendy Foster, Ted Fry and Martin Leaves. So I'm delighted to propose their names to you today. Each of them has worked tirelessly for their communities in various capacities over all those years. This recognition, Lord Mayor, is well deserved, and I ask the council's support this afternoon for this proposal. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Bowyer. Leader, I understand you're seconding the motion?
Thanks, Lord Mayor. Absolutely associate myself with the mathematics, if nothing else, of Councillor Bowyer. But it's exceptional service, isn't it? Not just to serve one term, but not just two terms, but any number. And in order to be an alderman, you have to have done that 15 years. Or been Lord Mayor, and in some cases you can be both, and you can be a former leader of the council and leader of your group, so it's all good. I think normally we reserve the CV reading for the occasion when they are presented. I don't propose to depart from that. But I would like to thank the three individuals named for their exceptional service to the City of Plymouth, and the honorary aldermanship is a big thing. It's a big thing, and I know people joke about it giving you the right to graze your sheep and all this sort of stuff, but we've gradually been eroding the significant advantages of the award over time. I'm not even sure they get a free car parking space out the front of the council. I'll have to check with the new arrangements. But I have to say, from this side, it's a thanks from us as well for exceptional service.
Thank you, Leader. Does anybody else wish to speak?
Perhaps I could sum up, Lord Mayor, by suggesting we move to the vote.
Okay, excellent. Please note on moving to the vote that a majority of not less than 2/3 of those voting is required to pass the resolution. We'll now move to the vote. Please use the buttons on your unit. Question from Councillor Churchill.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. I was just trying to inform you that Councillor Mrs Leaves was unable to vote. Her apparatus is not working.
So therefore, with a unanimous vote, the motion is carried. On behalf of the Council, I'd like to offer our congratulations to former Councillors Ted Fry, Martin Leaves and also Wendy Foster, who is here today. Pleasure to see you, Wendy, and look forward to the formal Honorary Alderman Award ceremony, which we're having on the 26th of November. That concludes the business for this extraordinary meeting.
John Partridge is one of the cast in the Theatre Royal pantomime this year, Dick Whittington, and at a recent press call, Keith Jolly caught up with him.
John, welcome to Plymouth.
Thank you so much for having me.
Are you familiar with this part of the world?
I am familiar. I've played Theatre Royal many times. I was here in the early 90s with Cats. I've also was most recently here 2016, I think it was Chicago. I've also played Miss Saigon here back in the day. I'm currently in Torquay with The Case of the Frightened Lady, which is the play that I'm touring with right now, the Edgar Wallace play. I love this part of the world. It's picturesque. It reminds you of a time gone by in a way, but it doesn't suffer, I think, like most of the seaside towns in the UK. It seems to have had investment and been invested in, and it's a joy because of that.
Now, obviously, I'm reading through your little script that I've got here.
Okay.
And one of the things I didn't realise is that you started off as a ballet dancer.
Yeah, I went to the Royal Ballet School when I was only 9, and did most of my formative training there, and that's where I began my career, in a way. I got into the Royal Ballet School on a medical. I'd had no formal classical training before that. My dad didn't want me to do ballet as a kid. I think he thought I'd be bullied. So I was allowed to tap dance, but I wasn't allowed to do ballet. And unbeknownst to him, I went off for a medical for the audition, and you could either take the ballet class or you could just have the medical. And I got in, and he was delighted. And that's where my story starts, really.
It's a bit like Billy Elliot, really.
Well, yeah. True story. When you go to the Royal Ballet School as a first-year student, you have a fifth-year student who is designated to look after you and becomes your surrogate father, as they call it at school. And my surrogate father was a gentleman called Philip Mosley, who the real-life Billy Elliot story is based on.
Oh, right.
Yeah. He was from Sheffield, I was from Manchester, working-class background, very similar upbringing, and so they thought it would be a good fit for me, and it was, and he's still a friend now.
What's the secret of lifting women up? Because you see
timing.
It's
really all in the timing.
It's and obviously they've got to help a bit as well, I suppose.
Well, it's about timing, and it's not about muscle mass or how strong you are, as most things aren't. It's about timing, and I think that's quite a good metaphor for life, really.
So from ballet school, you then went into musicals? Is that?
Yeah, I went into Cats when I was 16. So I'm 47 now. I've been doing this 31 years. Can you believe it? Yeah, I went into Cats when I was only 16, and that's where my sort of professional life started, and it's where I did a lot of my growing up.
So from then, you then went on to acting. Was that next progression?
Sure. From the age of 16 to 36, I did over 15 West End shows, tours, television, music videos. I worked with the wealth and breadth of people from Gillian Lynn, Trevor Nunn, Sam Mendes. And then I was doing a show called The Drowsy Chaperone. I was playing a toothpaste model opposite Elaine Page, and a lady called Julia Crampsey from the BBC came and saw me in that show and said we were auditioning for this character, Christian Clark, in EastEnders, and we think you'd be great for it. And then I got that, and then my life sort of, in some ways, changed, as with profile. It does. Your life does change.
You start to get recognised.
Yeah, you get recognised in the street, and that part of my life began.
Did that bother you at all?
I think at first it's a shock and maybe a novelty. It doesn't bother me because I'm very grateful for it. I never came into this business to be famous. I only ever wanted to dance. That's all I wanted to do as a kid. And everything has sort of it's been very organic, my career, in lots of ways. And that's just part of it. The reason I'm sat here talking to you today is because of that. So I'm very grateful of the fact that I am 47. I came into this business at 16, and I'm still working. I'm a jobbing actor, and I'm one of the lucky ones. I get to cross genre. I go from musical theatre to straight plays to television to reality television, and I'm able to do that. It's not that way for everybody, and I realise how lucky I am because of that.
Safety concerns on the A38 have been prevalent for some time now, with a number of accidents in recent years. MP Gary Streeter was asked whether the answer would be to extend the M5 south of Exeter.
I wish it was part of the solution, but unfortunately the Highways Agency looks sort of ahead 10 or 20 years, and they have no plans in the next 10 or 20 years to extend the M5. It would be very expensive to extend it all the way to Plymouth, because you've got to level so many of those hills and close so many of those junctions. It wouldn't be a straightforward thing to do. So the A38 is a very dangerous road from sort of Liscard to Ivybridge, really, or to South Brent. We have a meeting next week with Transport Secretary to try and find out what more we can do to make that road safer.
Nigel Edicott is playing the role of the Dame at the pantomime in the Theatre Royal this year. Keith Jolly has also been speaking with him.
Well, Nigel Ellicott, welcome back to Plymouth.
Thank you very much.
Because you've been here twice before?
Yes, and I think the last time I've just worked out was about 14 years ago. I was here with Cinderella with Brian Connolly, and we had a lovely time.
You're probably one of the best-known dames in the country at the moment.
Only because I've been hanging on for so long. This is my 36th year for Kudos, and oh look, they're going to do an army drop. The boys know I'm here. Yes, there's going to be food parcels any minute now. So it's 36 for Kudos and 44 years of doing panto, because before I was a dame, I was an ugly sister. Before I was an ugly sister, I was Puss in Boots. I've been a goose in Mother Goose, you name it. At one point, I didn't have an agent, I had a vet. I played so many animals. So year 44.
Now, you are an authority on pantomime, is that right?
Well, I wouldn't say that, but it's my passion, my hobby. I've got a website which is all about pantomime, not just the history of pantomime, but it's up-to-date pantomime. It's called itsbehindyu.com. You have to put dashes in. It's -behind-you.com. But we do a diary which shows you where every pantomime is and who's in it around the country. I think there's over 420 this year, pantomimes, professional ones. We also do some of the amateur pantomimes around the country. And then I've got sections of history. And every day I blog when I'm doing a pantomime. So there's a daily blog, and I've actually got the Plymouth Daily blog. And I was looking it up the other day, and I had a lovely afternoon. In between shows, I found that upstairs in the offices, on the walls, they've got all these fabulous photographs and posters of previous pantos at Plymouth. And yesterday was a marvellous day. I was at the archive of the Victoria and Albert Museum, and we were having a little look around in the sort of backstage area of the V&A, and I found Danny LaRue's Mother Goose hat that he wore here in Mother Goose, and I found Danny's opening costume, because he came on wearing a cyclist's outfit, Edwardian. And I'm still in touch with a lady called Patricia Michael, who was the principal boy in that pantomime Mother Goose. She lives in America. She married a gentleman who runs Radio City Music Hall. And I'm still in touch with her, and I think she did that pantomime around about, stab a guess, at about 1974. I love the history of panto.
I mean, you, as I say, are recognised as one of the top dames as far as the pantomime is concerned. But who are the people that you think are the greats as far as dames are concerned?
I've got a very small short list, obviously, and I think universally everybody agrees, Les Dawson. He's a very different dame to me. Les is a bloke in a frock. So he's Les wearing a dress. The only concession to being a dame is a little smear of lipstick, and of course his amazing, constantly hoiking up his bosoms. Now, in turn, Les Dawson is doing an impersonation of his hero. That was Norman Evans. And Norman Evans, as some of your older listeners might remember, was famous for sketches called Over the Garden Wall. And Norman Evans was a variety comic who was able to take the dame character out into the variety halls and do it basically 12 months of the year. And Les was so influenced by Norman Evans that he based everything he did on that. My other favourite dame's Roy Barraclough, a lovely friend of mine who died a short while ago. He was marvellous, and he and Les used to do Sissy and Ada in the TV series. John Inman is a huge, huge icon of mine. As a dame, he was absolutely magnificent, precise. So was Billy Dainty. They're really my heroes. Jack Tripp, of course, who did all those wonderful pantos with June Whitfield and Roy Hudd. I've got quite a lot, but that's the hardcore of them.
I mean, it's interesting that you mentioned Norman Evans, because wasn't it Norman Evans who did this thing that Les Dawson carried on with, where if they're talking about anything that was a bit...
yes.
That they used to just
mouth it.
That's right.
Well, I asked Roy Barraclough about this, because I said, I obviously Norman did it, but why did he do it being all confidential and usually sort of with the teeth out? And apparently it came from women in the factories in places like Bradford and Oldham. The noise of the machines was so loud that they developed a technique of being able to have conversations by mouthing, because you couldn't be heard. And that led itself to the comedy of every time something slightly racy was mentioned, Les would go into the miming and the, And Norman Evans, his catchphrase was, "That's twice on the same brick this week," because as he reached over the wall, he heaved his bosoms onto them and slipped, and the audience would just scream with laughter. They are the people who basically they're the keystones of pantomime.
City centre shopping has been in decline for some time. Gary Streeter set out his views as to what is needed to arrest that decline.
I think we know that they are in crisis. Of course, there's business rates is something the government can do, but it's not just about what government can do. The people who have shops and businesses in the city centre have got to make it much more of an experience. The real thing, the big change in the last 5-10 years, of course, is online shopping. I mean, my daughter, who's 38, I don't think she's been in the shop for 3 years. Everything's online, and the van brings the goods all the time. So we've got to come up with new ideas of resourcing the high street so that it becomes a greater experience. So you go there not just to shop, because you can shop online so easily, but you go there for enjoyment, for leisure, for an experience. And that's the way I think it's got to evolve. And also to live. In Plymouth City Centre, hardly anyone lives in the centre. That's got to change. Some of those retail premises could be converted into flats where people could live there, and it will help bring the city centre to life.
Another big local issue recently has been the sudden and unexpected closure of Hemerdon Mine. Gary Streeter outlined how this had been taxing him over recent weeks.
Hemerdon Mine is, in my constituency, is the largest tungsten deposit in Europe. It's the third largest tungsten mine in the world, and Wolf Minerals Limited, an Australian-based company, 4 years ago came along and started to open up the whole thing and start mining it. And unfortunately, out of the blue, they went bust and the mine was closed. I've had all kinds of meetings in the last 10 days. This has been my highest priority. It's 240 jobs, well-paid jobs, a lot of money for the local economy. And the important thing is that we keep the mine alive while interested parties have an opportunity to come along and buy it from the official receiver in bankruptcy. So, yeah, a lot going on there. It's a fluid situation. I think it's 50-50 chance of it staying open, and I very much hope it does, because once it's all closed up again, that tungsten will never come out and we won't get the economic benefit for our region.
And alas, that's it for another month. Theme music for our podcast has been provided by audionautics.com. Hope you've enjoyed this selection of information and news that we've had for you, and until the next time, thanks for listening and bye for now.
The Plympton Podcast.